Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to send a custom pop-up message to end users without using alert function. First of all, let me create a folder with name pop-up. After that, let's go to this directory by using cd pop-up. So I'm going to post my files using Vite web development server. So to use Vite, we need to write npm create Vite command. So after that, it will ask us to name our project. So I'm going to name it as Popup. So it is asking a library. I'm going to use React and then programming language as JavaScript. After that, I need to go to this project and then we have to install it by using npmi. It will take some time to install the necessary packages. So our project has successfully installed. Let me clear the screen and let's open our folder in VS Code by using command code. Just wait. So in order to run our application, we have to use the command npm run dev. Then it will host our files on port number 5173. It is the default port of Vite web development server. Let me open it in browser. So this is the default output of our page. So let's make some changes by using, let's remove the unnecessary files. I'm going to remove this public folder as well as assets folder. Let me remove this default code and let's remove these imports. Also remove the styles from index.css file and app.css file. Now let's see the output. So this is the output now. So let's add a form to this page. So for that we need to use a component. I'm going to name it as, first of all, let's create a folder with components, and inside this I'm going to create a file with name register.jsx. Let's create a boilerplate. So after that I'm going to create a form and add some inputs like for username and for email and for password. Username and username. Let's link this tag to an input element. ID is equals to username, name is equals to username. And let's name this as email, and let's link this label tag to an input element using, now let's name this as password. Here password. Let me copy this. Let's link this label tag to an input tag. It will be password and will be password. And let's add a button and register. Now let's load this component in our root file, which is app.jsx. Here we need to use register. Let's remove this state variable for now. Now let's reload the page. So this is the output. Let's add some styles to this form. First of all, let me change the background color of this document to black. For that we need to go to, let's add background color as 00, display flex and justify content center to get the form in the middle. And let's add align item center to get vertically centered, then height of 100 VH. Now the form is in the center of the document. Let's give a font family Sans. Now let's add styles to this form. So I'm going to create another folder with name styles, and inside this I'm going to create a file with name register.css, and I'm going to import this register.css file in the register.js file. Import styles register.css. Let's give a class name to this div tag with register container. Let's add some border to this form element. So for that we need to select this register container in our CSS file, register.css file. Dot register container border to be a solid white. Now the styles will be applied. Now let's add styles to the form element by display flex and flex direction of column gap of 20 px. Now let's style the label elements. So the label elements are not visible. We need to give the color of white so that it will be visible in our document. So now it's good. Let's give some padding of 20 pixels and width of 400 pixels. Now our form will looking good. Let's increase the font size of label element to 25 px. Okay. Now let's add styles to the input element using background color star 00 border none, and let's give some border bottom to be a solid gray. So after focusing on this input element, let's make the outline none. Put focus outline should be none, and let's give some padding to the input element of 15 pixels, and color should be white. Let's give some font size 22 pixels. Okay, now it's looking good. Let's add some style to this button element. Button padding of 20 pixels, border none, font size 4 pixels. Let's make the cursor pointer. Now after hovering on this button, my hand icon is displaying. So let me add a placeholder for this input fields also. Placeholder John Doe as well as for mail john.gmail.com, so that user will know what to enter in this input fields. So let's change the opacity of this placeholder by going to register.css placeholder. Let's make the opacity as 0.4 so that the opacity will be decreasing. So the brightness is decreased for this placeholder values. So now whenever user enter some things, we need to capture these values. So for that we need to use useState hook, and this useState hook with a variable which is user input, and a function to update this user input variable which is set user input. Inside this I am going to use useState. So whenever user enters something like Virat, the value of this input field is changing from empty to this Virat value. So in order to capture this, we need to add an onChange attribute, and we have to give a function to that onChange attribute which will be responsible for updating this value to this user input variable. So for that we need to add an onChange attribute which will be triggered whenever user enters some value inside the input. Let me add a function which is handle change. Let's declare that function here. So this function is responsible for, so when I type something here, I need to update this value to this input variable. So for that we need to use this user input function. Remember, this user input function is used to update this variable. So we are going to add a variable. This is an arrow function, and this pre-state variable references to this user input variable. So I need to use state. So this triple dot operator is used to copy the objects or arrays. So this restate references this user input variable. This user input variable. Let's give this user input. Let's give a value to this user input variable as an object. Since we have three input fields, we are going to give three properties for this user input variable. First one is username, and the second property is email, and the third property is password. So initially, this the values for this properties is empty, but after entering something, we are going to capture this and update these values to the values that are entered by the user. So when I type something hi, like not hi, so if I add Virat in this username input field, I have to update this value Virat inside this username property. So for that, I need to use v dot target dot name and then v dot target dot value. So this e dot this e dot target dot name is triggered whenever user enters something here. So after I have entered Virat, the value for this property will be e dot target dot value. The e dot target dot value is the value which is entered by user, which is Virat for now. So let me explain it more clearly. Let's add console.log e dot target dot name. So let me open the console in the browser. So if I enter something here, it is not defined. What happening? Oh, we have to capture that event here. So if I refresh it and add something here, this username is triggered. If I enter something here, it should be triggered. Let me check it. The target name. I have not given this on change attribute to the remaining input fields. So if I now type something in this email will be triggered. So if I enter something here, password will be triggered. So whatever we are entering here, we need to update this for this properties. So now let's handle the form submission. I'm going to create a function which is used to handle after user submits the form. So on submitting the form, I'm going to call this handle submit function. So this handle submit function will accept an event. So I'm going to prevent the default behavior of browser. So what is the use of this line is refresh it. So if I enter something like hi and hi, after clicking on register, these values are not removing from here, which is because of this line. So if I comment it out, and now if I click on register, these values will be removed from these input fields. If I click on this register, you can see the values are removed. So to prevent this behavior, we have to use this e.prevent.default. So After that, we need to validate the user input. So if user input this to field, but they didn't fill this input field, and then clicking on register, we need to send an error like all input field must have a value. So if we send a pop-up message like, they will understand what's happening. So for that we need to create a function like validate input, and this validate input will accept a variable which is user input, because this user input variable contains this values, and we are going to check those values and send the relevant response to the user. So let's create this validate input function. So here we are passing this user input variable which is an object. Inside this object we have three properties which are email, username, email, password. We need to accept this inside this function. So I'm going to use object restructuring to extract these properties as a variable. So I'm going to get this username variable, email, and then password. Now I can able to get the values of this username, email, and password. Now check. So let's add a condition like not email or operator, and then not password. So this condition will checks every input field must have a value or not. So if this condition is not satisfied, whatever we have written inside this body, that will be sent to the user as a pop-up message. So for the pop-ups, you need to use a library called React Hothost. So this library is used to send a pop-ups like this. You can see this didn't work. Like this pop-up messages will be sent to the user. So in order to use this React Hothost, we need to install that. I have already installed it. You can see here I have React Hothost inside this dependencies object. So in order, if you want to install, you can go to our folder and simply use command like npm I react hothost. After that, it will be installed in your package.json file. So in order to import that, first we need to import toaster inside our group file, which is app.jsx toaster. Let's import it. Let's import the toaster from library react hothost. After that, we have to import toast now. Import toast. Import toast from React toast. So if this condition is not satisfied, we are going to send an error message to the user like every input field must have a value. So let's check whether it is working or not. So if I click on register, we are getting every input field must have a value, because we have not entered any input. So if I enter some value here and here, after clicking on register, it is sending a pop-up message every input field must have value, because we have not entered any value to this password input field. So after that, so if this condition is not satisfied, we are going to return it. Another validation is if the password length is less than 6, we are going to send error message like password length must be greater than 5. So if the password length is less than 6, we are going to send a error message to the user like password length must be greater than 5 and then return. So if I write hi and here if I write only 4 characters, it is going to throw an error with message password length must be greater than 5. So if these values are entered by this user, these two conditions are satisfied. So we are going to send an message like post.success registration successful. So if the user input has passed this two conditions, we are going to send this success message to this user. So now if I click on register, it gonna send registration successful message. We can see. But if I enter only 4 characters in the password input field, it will throw an error. And if I enter nothing in this password input field, it gonna send this every input field must have a value. So that is the use of this React Hot Toast library. So to send an error message, we have to use toast.error. To send a success message, we have to use toast.success. So you can also add styles to this pop-up message by using a variable inside this like const styles, and you can declare whatever styles you want inside this styles variable like background color with gray and then color white. Let's add some padding and px. So in order to apply these styles to pop-up message, we have to add a second parameter as an object, and inside this object we have a key called style, and the value for this style should be the variable which is styles. And let's add this same styles to this error message also and for success message also. So now if I enter something in this input field, we can see the styles has been applied. The background color is gray and the color font color is white. So that's how to be done to add styles to this error pop-up error messages.